So, straight off the heels of reacting to Agatha All Along, here's going to be my reaction video to Captain America Brave New World, the fourth Captain America film, but also the fifth in the kind of series if you include the Falcon and Winter Soldier, Captain America and Winter Soldier. Um, it's interesting. This series has kind of been its own thing. I know of one person who has only ever seen the Captain America films because of Captain America and Winter Soldier being such a kind of well executed political thriller in the um, package of a superhero film. The first Captain America film isn't like hugely regarded as a Phase One film. People like have a lot of nostalgia for Phase One films, but they forget it was fairly mixed. And I think a lot of people pooped on Captain America, the first Avenger, for being a fairly like bland film. I enjoyed it, but it's not like I don't frequently go back to it. There's some like nice set pieces, but also it suffers a lot from early 2010 2011 kind of film being very kind of like leading into the whole CGI set pieces and the whole comic book and the whole like 3D like era that we were in at the time. So and then you had kind of a complete change of a more grounded film, which was Captain America. It was more Jason Bourne and more Mission Impossible than it was a superhero film. Obviously, there was some kind of superhero elements in it with like these superhumans, but it was still like fairly grounded. As a it had like lasting ramifications, at least in terms of like, well, it impacted Agents of Shield as a show hugely. Not really like the rest of the film series exactly, but it definitely, as a like a standalone film, especially, it kind of had a lot of success. People like appreciated the commentary on like on politics and on security states, but there was also kind of fairly like surface level commentary. Um, and then Civil War is an interesting film because it's not really a Captain America film, except it kind of is, but it's also kind of very much a film, an Avengers 2.5 film. Um, but you had certain commentaries about kind of security and personal freedom and autonomy. So it's still like these films all still like had these political kind of commentaries prevalent within them. And so in Civil War, we also had the Avengers films. And then they all have like if you watch the Captain America films just as Captain America films, you're gonna be very lost because there's a lot of tie-ins with the wider kind of MCU. Um, but obviously you had that end of the Avengers, and then Steve Rogers stepped down, and you had the Falcon and Winter Soldier as kind of this bridge where to kind of get people used to the idea of Sam Wilson being the new Captain America, and that was an interesting show. It was a show that had like a high amount of promise and a high amount of like potential, and it didn't miss, but it also didn't hit. It kind of got like about two thirds there. There was a lot of strong elements. The visual of the U.S. agent of John Walker having blood on the Captain America shield is like one of the most. Is like that's a shot of a comic book. But like if that was a comic book page, that would be like repeatedly used in like shared and disputed and referenced to. Like it's a powerful shot. You had a bit about the Black Captain America, the what was his name? Obadiah. Why am I blanking now? What his name is? God, it's been I can't remember. Maybe 3 years. Oh, where is he? Where is he? Isaiah Bradley, played by Carl Lumley. Um, so yeah, you had that as a character who was a very powerful, and that was a strong. And like the whole episode where he basically talked about how he did the exact same thing as Captain America did, but he was branded, he was tortured, he was imprisoned, he was criticized, he was buried by history, he had death threats put on him by the political state. That was all so powerful. Yeah, the bits where the Falcon was profiled for being black and almost arrested. Um, is a bit about how, the Falcon had no money and no one really cared because, he wasn't like this A-tier white superhero. And the whole kind of explanation about the pressures of someone of color having to represent a mantle, and the whole like analysis of the American state and what it represents and problematic and what it is to be a black person. That was also so powerful. But you had these really weak elements like the flag smashers being like people, like an example of Marvel's tendency to have bad guys with points that are too well made, and so they have to basically go and kill a bunch of kids to kind of get you to be against them because otherwise it sympathize them too much. And I think a lot of that was perhaps because of these rumors about how they had to delete a lot of like plot lines because they're too similar to kind of the pandemic that was going on at the time and stuff. I'm not sure how much true that was, or if that was, I think that was might be even demystified as reality. And you had like the Falcon ending his selling episode by being like, you got to do better, and then not actually like giving them like substantial like things to go along, like actual like solutions of sustenance. So it was very much a strong political statement, but it in typical kind of Marvel, and Marvel is a weird company because, and as a whole, I believe that creators are inherently intended to swing towards the left wing bias, but corporates tend to swing towards a right wing bias, and you have this weird situation where a lot of people who like write comic books are like a progressive left wing leaning people. The people who are bankrolling the films are actually right wing, and a lot of things, especially the Captain America franchise, get a lot of funding from like the US military, and so you've got to be careful about kind of the criticisms that you put in there. This film is interesting. There's been a lot of like politics put into it. It was originally meant to be called Captain America New World Order until people were like, that's too similar to anti-Jewish conspiracy theories, which is an interesting kind of thing to bring up because this film also features a former IDF militant, admittedly someone who, from what I can... I heard a weird noise. Admittedly, someone who apparently their only active service was part of the theatre corps, whatever that is meant to be in the IDF, or rather the IOF. But they are a former IOF militant, or at least an IOF, an ex-IOF person. They're an Israeli actor playing an Israeli person, and there's a lot of controversy around Ruth Bat Seraph, who is Sabra in the comics. I'm not actually that familiar with Sabra as a character, and I perhaps I should have maybe read about it more before we did this stream. I have seen people point out that Sabra is much like how Captain America is actually a criticism of American culture and the problematic elements of it. Sabra is also a criticism of the problematic elements of Israeli government and culture. I'm just kind of doing a quick skim over her Wikipedia article to see if I can kind of see anything that kind of suggests that's the case. But I mean, her whole premise here is that she was the first superhero agent to serve with the Mossad. She was a police officer in her personal life. It's interesting, a character, but as we all know, the films don't necessarily have to follow the comics, and certainly this film isn't doing so. So we've recontextualized it. It's not clear if she's going to be Sabra, but she is going to be a former Black Widow who's an Israeli person, and that I guess kind of checks out. She's now a high-ranking US official who's a close friend of President Ross. Obviously, you have to work out in the show how it deals with it. But it is a bold move. And I question maybe perhaps too bold and perhaps a bit too problematic for Marvel to be like, in the current climate, we're going to have an Israeli character in our Captain America film. Because art doesn't exist in a vacuum. Art never exists in a vacuum. And however you portray a character is going to be seen as a commentary and is going to have an impact. And so it has to have a lot of care and discipline behind it. And I wonder I have a lot of kind of like and people are gonna boycott this film because of their presumptions about the character. Some people might boycott the film. I think a lot of people are gonna boycott the film because they think it's gonna be pro-Israeli and pro-Zionist, and it might very well be. And I'll be just disappointed if it is. Equally, if it ends up not being, pro-Zionist, you're gonna have a lot of backlash. And I think, it's difficult. It's a very difficult situation to kind of execute. So it's curious that Marvel decided to do that. The rest of the cast, obviously, you got Anthony Mackie as Captain America, and you had this entire series to kind of build up the Falcon as Captain America, and now this is very much a sequel and exploration of that. Him continuing to earn that mantle. It's not like a simple thing to explore. It's a deep political statement to make about having a black Captain America, and I wonder how much of this film is going to rely on the work done by Falcon Winter Soldier, or how much of it is going to kind of redo that from scratch. You have Danny Ramirez playing Torres, who is now the Falcon, which again is interesting because obviously, I assume Torres, just by the surname, is yeah. So Ramirez is of Colombian and Mexican descent, so he is a person of color. And I assume so as a character. So you got two kind of people of color leads, which is obviously great to see. So it'll be interesting to kind of see that new dynamic. Obviously, this version of Captain America still uses the Falcon wings. You got two flying heroes. Carl Lumley reappears as Isaiah Bradley. So I guess hopefully look out for him in the trailer. We got Giancarlo Esposito, appearing in an undisclosed role, returning to the films for I think the first time since 2009's Incredible Hulk. Liv Tyler and Tim Blake Nelson as Betty Ross. Sorry, 2008. I forget it was released the same year as Iron Man. Liz Tyler and Tim Blake Nelson as Betty Ross and Samuel Stearns, and finally Samuel Stearns will appear as the leader. It's literally been a hanging plot hook for 16 years. Oof. And then Harrison Ford as the recast Thaddeus Ross, which I kind of hoped they wouldn't recast and they're just have a new character, but we will still see. Anyway, I've got to go, so we should probably get into this trailer reaction.
Wilson. Thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you for the invite, sir. I have to admit, I'm still getting used to the new look.
They said lose the mustache or lose the election. You and I haven't always agreed in the past, but I want to make another run at making Captain America an official military position.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get my mind around Harrison Ford being his character. It's distracting because William Hurt has a very distinct accent, and a cadence of speaking that's different from Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford is very much doing his own voice, his own kind of portrayal, and I did like the way that Hurt played Ross, that kind of very deliberate tone that Harrison Ford isn't really doing here. We'll have to do it again. I'm sorry.
Wilson. Thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you for the invite, sir. I have to admit, I'm still getting used to the new look.
They said lose the mustache or lose the election. You and I haven't always agreed in the past, but I want to make another run at making Captain America an official military position.
And if we disagree on how to manage this situation, then what happens?
Work with me, Sam. We'll show the world a better way forward.
Sir, your inner circle's been compromised. Either you can't see that, or you don't want to. What if it's a trap?
Global power is shifting. You're just a pawn.
You may be Captain America, but you're not Steve Rogers.
You're right. I'm not.
When is this coming out? February 2025. Okay, well, let's go for this a bit more kind of gently.
Wilson. Thanks for coming in.
I'm just trying to get over, like, again, Ross was like such a particular, her as Ross was like such a particular kind of aesthetic. But I guess if you become the president, you kind of change your demeanor, possibly. I'm just trying to imagine like Ross saying these words and how well, sorry, Hurt saying these words and how well I would have like translated, but I guess he's just getting over it, right?
Well, thank you for the invite, sir. I have to admit, I'm still getting used to the new look.
They said lose the mustache or lose the election.
I like the cutting of this trailer. It is very much spy thriller. Like, it's cut as if it's a scene from a spy thriller with, you know, cuts to other scenes, but the audio stays with the old scene, so you don't hear the audio in the new scene. It's just kind of implied from like the visuals, and obviously the kind of like audible cuts is that gives you that kind of implication of Cold War editing.
You and I.
And then obviously the spy thriller editing, the kind of opposite editing here where, you know, Sam isn't like the traditional way of framing a shot would have Sam on the left hand side facing the center of the frame, but here he is center slightly off facing away from center of the frame, and it kind of creates this very like unnerving slanted kind of appearance.
You and I haven't always agreed in the past.
That's
You and I haven't always agreed in the past.
And it's like shots of like other scenes which aren't necessarily like relevant to what's being said. So it kind of creates a sense of disjointedness. Here he's obviously going into a prison cell to speak to someone. This might very well be him speaking to Samuel Stearns, I think, possibly. Also, I'm just a big fan of like shots being framed within a frame. Always a big fan of that.
But I want to make another run at making Captain America an official military.
And then like the kind of instant like concern in his face, because again, it's his role, his position, his identity being politicized, and that's like a continuing theme from the show.
Military position.
And if we disagree on how to manage a situation, then what?
Military position.
And if we disagree on how to manage.
So here we have Shira Haas as Ruth Bat Seraph, the former Black Widow. Clearly in an interrogation room situation. This might be them interrogating Stearns. This might be them interrogating Bradley after his arrest. Clearly, see the implication I get from this shot, the coloring, the positioning, the acting is that she's not playing a heroic character, but that's just the way she's being coded here.
Just situation.
And then we have Giancarlo Esposito in a role which isn't really it hasn't been clarified yet. Playing some sort of militant.
What happens?
That scene seems very low res, but I don't know if that's deliberate or if that's just because it's early days, like VFX wise.
Work with me, Sam.
Interesting kind of hair, like style there with the shave. Is that just what Harrison Ford's hair looks like, or cause I don't remember anything distinct about Ross having that kind of hair? I know Talbot had a hairstyle like that.
We'll show the world a better way forward.
Hi, Kevin Feige. You know what was going to happen a few days ago? Yeah, people have been on Twitter commenting a lot about how this scene is essentially predicted the assassination attempt on Donald Trump by having a character essentially trying to assassinate a president. And then it's like the latest in a string of other predictions that Marvel has made. So, but it's so this is obviously going to be part of the kind of international scandal where, according to Wikipedia, Bradley has become like conditioned and blackwashed and is controlled by certain music, which is what's happening here. And obviously then flees through the oval window in a way which is very reminiscent of Bucky's escape. And then so I like this kind of visuals of like text flashing on and off screen. It is very much the right kind of tone being set.
Sir, your inner circle's been compromised. Either you can't see that, or you don't want to.
And I guess this is exploring where Bradley has been conditioned.
What if it's a trap?
Global power is shifting.
And I guess this is after Sam's agreed to become a military agent again.
You're just a pawn.
Ooh.
Global power is shifting. You're just a pawn.
So that I think is possibly Giancarlo Esposito with individuals. Possibly that's Ruth Bat Seraph, which kind of confirms the character is a villain in some way.
Pawn.
People seem to think that this shot here is
You're just a pawn.
is Captain America's funeral. I don't know if it is or not. Could be. It might just be someone else's. It gives me very strong Dark Knight vibes, but I guess that's unfair because there's less similarity when you wish not. But also they're not in time. Like they're wildly off. They need to practice their drill better. And again, we see Stam as a Captain America who is obviously without that super strength and having to use other kind of means. I love the editing; it's really good. And then the atypical badass doesn't look at explosions shot. And then again, more shots of Ruth Bat Seraph. I think this is probably also Kosha Rockamore as another Secret Service agent. Oh, so they still have New World in it. And then I guess this is another president does a speech and there's an attack and SWAT have to like intervene.
Maybe Captain America, but you're not Steve Rogers.
That is a pretty dope match cut.
You're right. I'm not.
I love the motif between black and white, black and white. And then Red Hulk, who it's not confirmed. I mean, well, that does look like Harrison Ford's face being mapped there. It's not explicit in the anything that Ross is going to be Red Hulk, and it wouldn't be beyond the realms of the twist that MCUs do with the materials, that they would not, you know, have someone else as the villain. Like it could easily be like, say, this could be easily Giancarlo Esposito in this role. We don't see much of Tim Blake Nelson or Liv Tyler in this trailer, and that makes me feel like they're not going to be a big part of the film, but they might like have cameos and roles, smaller roles in it. But traditionally, Thaddeus Ross does become Red Hulk, so everyone's kind of assuming that's what's going to happen here. It might very well be the case. There seems to be a lot going on. Like you've got this superhero, the supervillain enemy, but also political intrigue, and clearly editing and the music and the themes is trying to make you remind you of a Winter Soldier. So it's trying to be that, and you know, the Winter Soldier caught everybody by surprise. No one expected it to be this really well put together political thriller. So hopefully, you know, this is what this ends up being. Anyway, I have very much got to leave. I have a meeting in an hour I need to prepare for, so we'll probably end this reaction video here. Whoops. We'll probably end this reaction video here, but thanks for tuning in, and I guess we'll look out for more reveals. See you all later.